Tier list time. Again, it's the Enthroners this time. A few more teams have also announced their final signings, being the Raiders have now announced. They went from announcing none of them to announcing quite a few of them, so they've become the most recent team. The Enthroners, though, we're going to go through their signings today. The Enthroners, of course, are one of the worst teams in the league. Let's be completely honest with where we're at. But the homegrown talent is more so of an issue than the import class. Having said that, I have mixed feelings about this import class, some of which I think are very good signings, some I'm a little bit more questioning. We'll get to it. Let's just sit down, relax. I'm going to have a Pepsi Max cherry, of course, and we'll just go one by one on the imports. If you have been supporting the rest of it, I have a whole playlist describing the rules and where we're at, and so you can fill yourself in with the kind of players and the quality of the other teams. Elefthepedia have just updated their list of my rankings for the team so far, and yeah, let's just get into it. We'll start with the positives. Rodon Enrique, defensive back from the Netherlands, formerly of the Leipzig Kings, played a bunch of games over there. 19 games to be precise, got 8 interceptions, 5 in the second year, and then only played 1 game in 2023 for rupturing his Achilles while going for an interception. It's kind of an awkward one. It is a good signing. I think Rodon Enrique is a starter level corner. It's one of the better European defensive backs out there. It's pretty undeniable. He is a former all-star. He knows how to pick the ball off. He has big playability and return ability when he actually has the ball in his hands. Decent tackler as well. He's not awful. I have seen him in person working out, so I know that he looks fast. I think he looks physical with his hands again, and I don't think he's going to be gun shy going into the year. I think he's a starter player. I think he is a very talented player. I think that he's one of my favourite players just to watch because he's fun. He really does know how to pick up the ball, and obviously high step into multiple pick sixes in the previous season of 2022, not 2023, because of course the injury. But that is a big thing. You know, an Achilles injury is huge for any athlete, let alone a defensive back, because you know you're going to be backstep, you're going to be backpedaling. That requires a lot of tension on your Achilles and your calf. So I am worried. However, he's a very talented player, and I think that he'll be fine. Looks like he's going to be the number 1 corner as well, so he's going to be getting tested, that's for sure, because they don't have American DBs, which is extremely controversial, and we'll get into that in a minute. But Dion, starter. Our first offensive lineman, British offensive lineman, Ben Dixon, has good get off, strong elbows, and a high motor. Punch separation and balance with redirects, maybe not exactly where you need to be. He's not great in space, but he is strong. If he gets hands on you, it's kind of ropes. Played 9 games for the Barcelona Dragons, which was a fairly underrated line. They did pretty well in the pass protection. Run protection, maybe not so much, but to have a good pass protector is important. They are going to need that. Having said that, I'm going to put Dixon as a role player within this team. He's going to probably be the best offensive lineman because Hungarian offensive line was not very good, and Ben Dixon would improve that. You know, they had Connor Bolton last season, and they've got Ben Dixon this season. We'll see how he does, but I think that given the rest of the offensive line, it's kind of going to struggle to see him. I think at times we saw the same with Connor Bolton, who is a fantastic player, but he kind of got overshadowed because the offensive line was bad as a unit, and it didn't exactly bring praise to the rest of the team. So Ben Dixon with me is a role player on this offense. From one Brit to another, Henry Rolland, tight end, coming out of Leeds, played for London Blitz, plays for Town with Phoenix. He's played around. He also plays on the GB team. Decent tight end. I think he's solid. He kind of couldn't show much of that at Leeds this year because quarterback issues and stuff like that. So he actually had to step in at quarterback, which is good for athleticism. You could argue has decent hands. Not the best blocker. He's more of like an H-back where he'll spread out wide and play more as a big-bodied receiver. But he's a hard person to bring down. He's pretty physical at the catch point as well. So for me, again, I'm going to put him as a role player. Tight end is quite a position where you don't really see very many tight ends because the best tight ends are kind of already around. You got Obama, who obviously is now left at IPP. You got Petra Moreno, who is like the quintessential tight end that you want because he's been at the All-Star in every season he's been around. You got people like Marcus Schreibel, who are Austrian and play Austrian teams. Petra Kamara is a very good tight ends, Tim Kambawamba, both from France. And you don't see very many E's, except for Botella Moreno. So it is quite unusual for them to go. They have gone very unusual with their selections. Offensive line and DB is pretty normal. Tight end is out of the ordinary. But Henry Rolland as a player, I think he's going to be used a lot more as the Travis Kelce kind of receiver. He's not Travis Kelce. Let's just make that clear. Because I know a few people are going to say, and it's people in the UK, you say, you're comparing him to Travis Kelce. I'm not comparing him to Travis Kelce. But just think of the role where he's more out wide rather than tight on the line of scrimmage. I don't think we'll see him in a three-point stance particularly often. Nyman Neelsen, defensive back from Denmark, formerly the Potsdam Royals. Aggressive on the ball, pretty lengthy as a defensive back as well. He has pretty good high pointing when it comes to going after the ball as well, which is solid. He had 2 picks for the Potsdam Royals last season. I think there's a lot of wasted talent in his movement. Some of his cuts could be quite soft. I don't think he breaks down his trigger as much as he needs to. And he's going to be on the number 2 receiver quite a lot with Rodon. So I think I'm going to also put him in the role player category. Just because he's going to be tested a lot being the second corner on some elite European receivers. And at Potsdam, there's not as much competition. You are on a better team. And I would like to see how he steps up in terms of the adjustment to the ear left. However, I think he is going to fit into a role player. Adan Jr, defensive tackle from France. Used to play for the Catalan Grizzlies. He's listed at 6 foot as well, so he is kind of an undersized defensive tackle. I think he is strong in contact and he has a high motor. But speed-wise and bend-wise, and that's not necessarily as important for a defensive tackle, but off the ball, he's not fantastic. I think that his power level could be improved as well. I'm trying to think, if I was a French team, if I was the Musketeers, would he start over people like Sai? No, I don't think he would. So for that reason, I'm going to have him as a bench player. Samuel Boutchiong, another Netherlands player. He is a receiver. He runs an unofficial 4.5, has an unofficial 3.97 shuttle, 10-1 broad jump, and then a 35 vertical. That's all unofficial, but I have seen him play in person. He has fast feet, active hands, solid route running. I need to be able to see him create separation at the next level because he's young. Like he's a very young receiver. So this is a big step up in terms of the competition level, in terms of the DB he's going to be on, because he's going to be the number 2 guy. He's going to have to come across a lot of really talented corners, and I really need to see the step up. It's kind of him, Nielsen, and Rolland. I need to see the step up in competition. Same what I guess with Teddy, but I know these guys can do it. It's the rest of these ones I'm not so sure on. But Samuel is an excellent receiver. I think he has to add a bit more size to his frame in order to be more durable on the inside, because I think a lot of this game with the Enthroners is going to be short routes and getting the receivers the ball in the hands early, because as we'll see in a minute, that's kind of what the quarterback and with the receivers they have is what they're going to need to do, because the best running back in Hungary is now injured for the whole year, which is not good. So they're going to have to try and find ways around it. I think Samuel can be an extension of the run game. He can take jet sweeps and add a bit of muscle on. He could definitely do that. He can be a deep threat. He is super fast, so he can be a deep threat. He's only about 22 years old. He's listed at 5'11", 175, so he is slightly smaller. But as a slot or an outside player who can be deep threat potential or can take the ball in the hands and run quick, I'm good with either of them, but I'm still going to put him as a role player because of the inexperience, because of the step up in competition, and because of the durability concerns. That would be the main points with that. Another player that is having quite a big step up is Malik Kenall, defensive lineman for the Dustor Panther last season and a GFL 2. It's kind of weird. It says in the GFL website he has 1 sack, but then on his highlight reel it says 5.5. So I don't really know what's going on there. But as a defensive end, he has a good get off the ball. He can penetrate into the backfield. Has a good effect on the run. Another thing when it comes to step up, and his lack of bend, I think, is quite noticeable. And a burst to close would be quite a concern. He can twist pretty well, and he can stunt his releases. But in terms of the closing speed, I still need to see it. He did have a fairly successful collegiate career, and he's taking a big step up. And defensive end is an extraordinarily competitive market. So once again, I'm going to put role player. I think probably about here. The weird thing is, they got Malik and they've got Jabar Regan. Jabar Regan's great, we'll get to him in a second. However, 2 American defensive ends is incredibly controversial. Teams don't do that. Like, DB is the meta because you need a DB. I think, in my opinion, and roster building in your left, you need an American DB. So to go very heavy on 2 American defensive ends is brave. It's very brave. It's kind of obvious what they're trying to do. I think they're trying to stack the defensive line and give offenses less time, and then try and get 2 players. Well, he definitely knows how to make a play on interceptions. Neelsen is lengthy and can kind of sit in a coverage system well. So it looks to me they're going to play coverage and they're going to blitz and try and create turnovers. That seems to be what they're trying to do on the defensive side of the ball. But 2 American defensive ends is something. We'll see if it works. If it works, it works. But I am very doubtful, to say the very least. Jabar Regan is going to be next up, an underrated defensive lineman because he got 9.5 sacks in 10 games last year, but because he was on a bad team, no one really noticed. He's been there for a while too, but he's listed for some reason at 3 foot and 410 pounds on the ELF website. Well, I'm pretty positive that's not true. He is 30. Now he's just hit his 30th year. He has good lateral quickness. He is obviously experienced. He's played all over the shop. But I think that he can be moved by tight ends. We saw a few times in the Vienna game where, because of like Frey, who is a good blocking tight end, but would be able to move him quite convincingly. And he gets double teamed so often. Because the defensive line last year was not spectacular, he was seeing double teams left, right, and centre. So it's very hard for him to get off of that. But he did get nearly double-digit sacks in 10 games. So as far as defensive ends go, I think that he would be on that starter category. Because he is a very experienced player when it comes to his hand movements and his back. Like, he has a pretty damn good spin move too. It just depends on if he's going to be able to get open. And with Malik, he might be able to do that a lot more. Nathaniel Robotti, of course, of the Ryan Fire, formerly another ELF All-Star. 2022, he got 1,183 yards. Of course, this season he was injured, only played in 4 games, but still managed to get 487 yards. So and 4 touchdowns. So he got 14 touchdowns in the year previous. One of the elite receivers in the league. Rapid, super fast. He is 31. Did have the injuries last season, which could be a concern. But as far as receivers in the ELF go, he's of course one of the better ones. He is a former All-Star, and I can see him being just the target man when it comes to this team. I hope. He obviously has All-Star potential, so I'm going to put him as an All-Star. He's very clearly could be an All-Star. He has the ability to do so. It's just, is this offense designed for him to be an All-Star? Maybe. I mean, you could argue that it is, because he's going to get so much of the ball, the running back injuries, and the offensive line not being able to hold on for too long. He's just going to get catch after catch on the quick screens and slants and drags and stuff like that. So you could argue he's going to get a lot of the ball there. Or you could argue the offensive line isn't going to give him the time. He's going to be double teamed by pretty much every DB in the league. And the quarterback, who we'll get to in a second, isn't my favourite quarterback in the ELF. I'm going to put Robotti though as an All-Star, because he has showed to me that if he was back on the Fire, for example, he would be able to put another 1,000 yard season up. He looked great in the final, so I'm believing in Robotti to come back fairly strong. Jack Mangle is going to lead this team. Former quarterback of Concord. I am not a massive fan of this signing. Senior year, he got 18 touchdowns and 19 interceptions. He threw an interception in every single game. He hasn't been in a game in college where he didn't get intercepted since October 2022. Absolutely a cause for concern. You know, this decision making, that's accuracy issues. He does have a decent arm and velocity on the ball. I think he looks static in the pocket. I think his feet look heavy. And of course those turnovers, man, that's killer. To have more interceptions than touchdowns is D2 level is a bit worrying, if I'm going to be honest. And I'm unsure how this team is going to be able to get around that. Of course, he's a young guy. He's only just graduated college. So he's still 24. He's 6'2", 220 pounds. I think for this to be a successful player, they need to buy in with him. They need to treat him as a franchise quarterback. Say, look, this Jack's going to be the guy for 3 years or 2 seasons or 4 seasons or whatever, how long they want to do it. They cannot have him for 1 year because he might not be able to adjust to that. He didn't start his college career great. He had a bad season his sophomore year, had a decent third year and junior year, and then slumped into the senior year. There might be stuff that I don't know. There might be coaching changes. There might be a lack of weapons or a poor offensive line. But from what I've seen, he would be a role player for me. I can't see him being in the All-Star pickups. I can't see him competing for MVPs with this team. And overall, it sounds extremely negative. And it is a shame that I have to talk negatively about some of these players. It's obviously not what we want to do as scouts and analysts. We want everyone to be up. But it's not the best import class. It is not the worst import class. I'm really dreading doing the Barcelona Dragons one because I think they have the worst import class. There are bright sparks, of course. There are multiple starter level players. There is a potential all year left. There's a bunch of young guys who could come in and dominate. Just need to see it happen. You know, they have reinforcements on the offensive line. They have speed at that receiver core. They have some physical size when it comes to some of their other positions. They have turnover creators. It's just, is this a lot of good individual players that are not going to be able to perform well because of the team? I guess we'll find out. The season's very close. Done a bunch of these, so I'll leave the link to the playlist in the description below. If you guys watched to the end, thank you very much. I will be doing the Raiders one as soon as possible. I have a bunch of other stuff. I just want to get these out because people enjoy them and they do well, and everyone seems to enjoy hearing my opinions on these players. So much appreciated. Thank you very much. Hope you have a good day. Thank you again, and